But anyways, the next subject now that we're moving out of that is scalability. How will Bitcoin deal with the millions and billions of transactions that want to cross? And if we have a maximum of 7 transactions per second, how will that be feasible? Luckily, we've already seen plenty of examples of bunching up or off-chain, Coinbase to Coinbase, Circle to Circle, hot wallet, which has saved the network and opened up the freeway quite nicely. You have the purists that, Bitcoin purists that would rather everything be solely individually on the blockchain, but realistically, one hard point for Bitcoin has always been the on-ramps and off-ramps, but mostly the on-ramps. Just 8 months ago, if they were going to be honest, it was a complete nightmare to get Bitcoins. You'd have to go through localbitcoins.com and meet some guy at Starbucks, and depending on how much you buy, you'd have to at least spend $20 for the guy's time. So entry into it was you had to make kind of a little bit larger purchase to get your toe wet, to dip your toe in, I'm sorry. And it was a complete nightmare. Even all the big names in Bitcoin would always elude and, really avoid that topic, because it would always come, that sounds nice, how do I get a Bitcoin? Well, trade your service, or all this, very indirect, very, there was no real answer because everybody has their local fiat, and to get it to Bitcoin, you need an on-ramp. Also, less than a year ago, it was such a shady gray area. All accountants would shun it. It's not even, categorized by the government, and people like people are getting in trouble for not having a money transmitter license, and so it was a complete scary time as far as gray areas. In the United States we have less gray areas. In other countries they're quite common. We do have them. I mean, obviously garage sales or Craigslist is a gray area. Anything over $500 is gray. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But anyways, now that it's official, it's green lighted, it's mainstream, it's opened the gates to legalize it as far as Coinbase and Circle and these on-ramps, where now you can buy very little amount for basically free and cash out legally. The purists do not like that because you're entrusting. You always have to entrust someone when you're dealing with fiat. Even the guy at Starbucks that you're handing him, there's got to be some level of trust. And even though you could take $1,000 that you just purchased on Circle and transfer it to your cold storage, and I don't see what the downside is. But it also opened up another category of bundling transactions. So when I send money or Bitcoin, from Circle to Circle, it's not only instant, but it's free, and it's bundled up with 100 other transactions. So the network or the highway has not been congested quite as much. And we're seeing this all over the place. You could see reports of like gambling sites and stuff with all these little tiny bets and whatnot. They were trying to originally to do each one. Now they do just like the chips. You turn in your chips and it's one transaction. They bundle that up. So scalability is not as big and scary. It's the new 51 attack. The new there's been so much garbage. It's just the next one. And I'm glad to see Roger Ver. Looks like he's opened up a new forum, because Reddit and all these places are just flooded with garbage. Someone will be asking great questions or debating new ideas, and instead the responses would be you misspelled scalability, or you had a run-on sentence about the halving, and the core topic is just never discussed or replied to. It's just a mess. So now that the altcoins and the blockchain have been debunked, is just so crowded with people trying to game the system somehow and flood with just misinformation. It's just a nightmare to get a realistic person. But that being said, there's going to be another halving within a year. Now, that is major. Bitcoin is brilliantly designed from the beginning to taper off. There's 21 million in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and they are flooded onto the market with ever decreasing volume. It started off at a massive 50 per 10 minutes, and then 4 years later, 25, and then so on. It keeps cutting in half every 4 years. What does this mean? It's also designed that those go on the open market every 10 minutes or around that, because it's so expensive to make a Bitcoin. And since 95% of the expense in a Bitcoin goes to electricity and hardware and whatnot, they have no choice but to sell it for the local fiat and pay their electric bill. There's no business model that gets around the expense. So it's constantly new Bitcoins are being dispersed throughout the system. So you don't have as many peaks and valleys. Now that Bitcoin is the granddaddy and the winner and legal and mainstream and secure, the security has no valleys, no dips. It's going straight up. It's quite amazing. Security is stronger every month, without exception. It just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. With that, scalability is the next thing. Sign me up. There's too many people on the freeway to always have your transaction done in the first 10 minutes. So a lot of people have gone off chain, which is great, especially when you have little 2-cent transactions that are trying to have a bigger memory block size and bootstrap the system for timestamping, which is great as long as it's not abused. What I believe is the next step, because consensus rule means that everybody has to agree or it gets turned down straight up. So the miners can't overpower the retail, wallets can't overpower miners, and everybody has to agree, or nothing changes. And if nothing changes, I'm happy. The average guy on the street is happy. Nobody wants ever changing. But with a burn fee or a destructive fee, it gets really interesting really quick. It's hard to sum up really quickly, but what that means is a fee that's assessed to every single transaction, but goes to no one, and at the same time goes to everyone. When you take a fee and you take it out of circulation forever, that increases scarcity. Scarcity is basically the more scarce something is, the more valuable it is. Doesn't matter if it's a stamp or baseball card or gold or silver. A huge chunk of its value is made from its scarcity. And so what people realize real quick is with 21 million Bitcoins ever to be, or whether it be 100 years or whatnot, if you take that and there's 140 million Americans as of 2014, that means not every just American can own a Bitcoin or even a tenth of a Bitcoin. So it gets a lot of people really excited really fast, and the obvious problem with that is there's not enough to go around. But that was already thought of too. Each one, instead of having 99 cents, it has 100 cents. Instead of breaking down into 100 parts, each Bitcoin can be broken down into 100 million parts. So Coinbase has already foresaw this, and on there they don't even label it Bitcoin, they label it bits. And there's 1 million bits for Bitcoin, so it works out quite nicely. Block size increase is not needed. What is needed is burn fees. Burn fees that double every halving would be most ideal. So let's say a burn fee was enacted right now for 2 cents, or equivalent to 2 cents. And then at the halving, every 4 years, it would double. And that would give the miners and the people that invest in mining and companies and stuff, it would give them a very clear picture of the future and the investment into the ever increasing security of Bitcoin. Because not only, right now it can be looked at in a couple of ways, that it's inflating or it's or like there's 21 million. But if you add a burn fee in there, even if it's 1 or 2 cents that doubles every halving, now the PR on the radio, TV, whoever's talking, they would have to acknowledge that it's actually a deflationary commodity. In other words, there's less. And the more times it's used, the more scarce it is. And the more scarce it is, the more that the miners would actually get paid in their local fiat. This is where it gets complicated, but it's really not that complicated. When it started, it was 50 Bitcoins per reward, and at one time it was $1, so that's $50. They would be rewarded every 10 minutes. Now it's 25 Bitcoin at, let's say, $200. So 5,000 versus $50. Even though the price went down, the fiat value went up because of scarcity and adoption. It's a mix of stuff, but if you get rid of the scarcity, you get rid of the value. It's a key ingredient. And since the miners, I don't know if you know this, they cannot keep the Bitcoin that they mine because they have to pay for electricity, which we just went over. But that being said, with a burn fee, you would still have all of the benefits you have now. And that would make it micro transactions even cheaper. And you say, well, if there's a higher fee, burn or not, how would it make it cheaper? What it allows companies to come in there, bunch them up for you, insure them, make them simpler and grandma friendly. And since they could take 20 transactions into one transaction, they could charge you 1 cent instead of the 4 cent and still be able to have this great service wrapped around it. That being said, you could always pay the 4 cents. Let's say you want to transfer $1,000 and you don't want to go through a hot wallet or anything risky, or you want to register your house or whatnot, then you would pay the 4 cents. What that would do is that would make all, not just the miners, but all of Wall Street, all the people that have to try to make sense of the value going forward and make a picture, they would know that each time that the freeway was jammed, that was actually a benefit in theory that it's that much more scarce or that much more valuable. If they reported there was 200,000 transactions today, on the network, then it would be 200,000 times 4 cents rate to scarcity. And so that would definitely clear the freeway and make it ever more stronger. There's 1,000 different ways to go, but this should be a very interesting year because this is the first year in the United States where accountants, which influence 90% of Americans on what's kosher and what's not kosher, instead of them shunning all their millions of customers about Bitcoin, they can actually put it into a category. Since the government has now said it's a commodity, now they could recommend it. Even at the most conservative accountant, could say, yeah, buy yourself one and buy your loved ones one, and throw it, stash it away for 20 years. It wouldn't even be a huge appetite for risk, and if they start diverting the recommendations from gold to Bitcoin, the days of being able to buy a Bitcoin will be long gone, because the math doesn't, there's only 21 million, and that's going 100 years, total, and there's billions of people. Well, I don't even have to explain that math. We're going to be dealing with bits. So, anyways, I'm looking forward to the forum at bitcoin.com versus Reddit, which is, good job, Roger Veer. I mean, it's needed. If you could recommend any think tanks or idea places that exchange Bitcoin related topics, please post that. Thanks again. Good job, Bitcoin.